Mr Speaker. The Minister for the Cabinet Office and I usually enjoy trading a few jokes at these sessions, but sadly this really isn't a week for laughter. We on this side join him in standing in solidarity and shared grief with the people of Sri Lanka and all those who lost loved ones on the Easter Sunday slaughter of peaceful worshippers and innocent tourists, at least 45 of them children. And among them the 8-year-old cousin of our friend, the member for Hampstead and Kilburn, an act of utter depravity and evil which stands in sharp contrast to the words of love written by Ben Nicholson about his wife and the children that he lost. Yesterday we also celebrated the life but mourned the loss of Billy McNeill, the first Briton to lift the European Cup and a man who spent his life fighting against sectarian hatred. And last Thursday we mourned the senseless murder of the brilliant young journalist Lyra McKee, whose funeral the Prime Minister is right to attend, and whose death was a horrific reminder of where sectarian hatred ultimately leads. We stand with Lyra. In her name, Mr Speaker, can I ask the Minister for the Cabinet Office to tell us what the Government is doing to bring her killers to justice and protect Northern Ireland from a return to terror?
Mr Speaker, can I first very much welcome both the tone and the words of the Right Honourable Lady. And can I also say that I would share her tribute to Billy McNeill, who died on Monday. He made no fewer than 790 appearances for Celtic. It's a testament to an extraordinary career during which he also won 31 major trophies as a manager and a player. And I think our thoughts and sympathies are with his family and friends. As the Right Honourable Lady will fully understand, the decisions about criminal investigations in Northern Ireland are a matter for the Police Service of Northern Ireland and for the Independent Public Prosecution Service. We very much hope, as a government, that any member of the public who has information that will lead to Lyra's murderers being brought to justice comes forward, and I am hopeful, given the sense of community solidarity that there has been in Londonderry and in Northern Ireland generally, that that information will be forthcoming.
Thornberry.
I thank the Minister for his answer, Mr Speaker, and I know he speaks with huge authority and passion on this issue. Reading the statement from the so-called new IRA last week, with its talk of attacking enemy forces and its sincere condolences for Lyra's death, it was a sickening throwback to the days that we thought that we'd left behind 20 years ago, from despicable individuals whose only desire is to turn back the clock and destroy the progress that's been made. So does the Minister for the Cabinet Office agree with me? This is one of the central reasons that we must find an answer to the Northern Irish border question rather than give these evil terrorists the divisions that they crave.
I think that I would draw a distinction between the two. I regard both issues that the Right Honourable Lady has raised as important, but I don't think that those murderers in Derry were motivated by any thoughts about the border or about customs arrangements, important though those issues are. I think what the Right Honourable Lady said, that I wholly agreed with, was the utter unacceptability of references to police officers in Northern Ireland as if they were somehow a legitimate target. One of the great achievements of the peace-building process in Northern Ireland has been the very difficult and controversial reform of the police service, where you now have young men and women from both unionist and nationalist communities who serve gladly together, upholding law and justice in Northern Ireland, and we should, all of us in this House, continue to send every officer in the PSNI our full support.
Emily Thornberry.
I agree entirely with the sentiments expressed by the honourable gentleman, but can I bring him back to the issue of the border? Because I agree with the ends that he's trying to achieve, but the fundamental problem remains the means. We all know that his own party and the DUP will not accept the current backstop, but the only way the government plans to avoid that backstop is to deliver a so-called invisible border. But last week we saw a leaked Home Office presentation stating that, and I quote, "No government worldwide currently has a system in place Current realisation for a technological solution in the UK is 2030. And, they said, there is currently no budget for either a pilot or for the programme itself. So can the Minister tell us, are the Home Office wrong?
Well, I'm not going to comment on sort of alleged leaks from government departments. What I can say to the House is that the government has allocated £20 million to invest in work on alternative measures that would bring benefits in terms of seamless trade, both to the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, but which, if successful, more generally could be applied to give us smart borders on all of the United Kingdom's external borders and perhaps offer us some export opportunities for that technology as well.
Emily Thornberry.
Well, it's interesting what the Minister says, but the Home Office, also says that there are 6 problems with deploying these technological solutions. It's expensive, and there's no budget. 2, it has to operate with 28 different UK government agencies. 3, it needs to operate on both sides of the border. 4, it won't be deliverable until 2030. 5, the government has a poor track record, to say the least, on big tech projects, and no one, 6, in the world has done anything similar. So that, Mr. Speaker, is hardly a recipe for success. The real answer to Northern Ireland border question is staring the government in the face. 28 months ago, and 2 Brexit secretaries ago, I told the Minister from this dispatch box that the only way to avoid a hard border was staying in a customs union. And, of course, the alignment of all rules and regulations. And he indeed himself said 3 years ago, that for anyone to pretend otherwise, he said, flies in the face of reality. That was the truth then, and it remains the truth today, so why will the government just not wake up to it?
Mr. Speaker, I did say to the Right Honourable Lady in our previous exchange that there is a £20 million budget that has already been earmarked for this work. It is also the case, whatever the Right Honourable Lady may be reading in the newspapers about timetables, that not just the United Kingdom, but the European Union has committed itself to trying to get these alternative measures agreed by 2020. That is not an undertaking, a commitment that the European Commission has entered into lightly and without some thought and analysis about the chances of achieving that. But could I say to the Right Honourable Lady, the solution that she identifies of needing to have a frictionless border on the island of Ireland is what is delivered by the government's withdrawal agreement. Yes. Therefore, what she should be doing is urging her right honourable and honourable friends to vote for what the government is proposing instead of rejecting it and therefore blocking the Brexit which her party's manifesto commits her to.
Emily Thornberry.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we've heard it all before, let's face it. The only point the Minister didn't make this time was that Britain must be able to establish her own international trade agreements. Perhaps he's been listening to Nancy Pelosi last week, who made it clear that if the UK government disrupted the open border in Northern Ireland, we could forget all about a free trade deal with the US. So the government is going to spend millions giving Donald Trump the red carpet, golden carriage treatment in June. And maybe the state banquet might even be worth it, so long as he's forced to sit next to Greta Thunberg. Or how about this? If then he has Greta on one side and David Attenborough on the other. That would be 3 hours well spent. But the truth is, Mr. Speaker, that it will all be a giant waste of taxpayers' money because the US Congress will never agree to a trade deal unless we have a solution for the Irish border that will actually work. And this government simply doesn't have one.
Mr. Speaker, it's just 2 short years ago that the Right Honourable Lady said of President Trump, we should welcome the American president. We have to work with him. I just wonder whether something has changed about the US administration or whether something has changed about her own leadership ambitions that causes her to alter her words in this way now.
Which is it? Come on, which is it?
The government... the government and the Labour Party, I thought, both wanted to see no tariffs, no quotas, no rules of origin checks, a seamless border on the island of Ireland. Yet 3 times, the Right Honourable Lady and her colleagues have voted against a deal that would deliver those things to which they claim to be committed. It is about time that she put principle and the national interest ahead of party advantage.
Emily Thornberry.
I think, Mr. Speaker, we'll find that there's only one side of this House that has a leadership contest at the moment, and it's very active as we speak. But, Mr. Speaker, in a week like this, when we have all been shocked and saddened by the horrific acts of terrorism at home and abroad, we remember that the first job of any government is to keep our country and our citizens safe. And even before our concerns about the economy, the main reason we need to keep an open border with Ireland is to preserve that peace and security that millions of British and Irish citizens have come to depend upon, but which, in a week like this, seems to hang like a thread. So if the government is serious about putting the country first, the whole of our country, will the Minister for the Cabinet Office accept? That means finally getting serious about the cross-party negotiations and putting the option of a customs union on the table.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the Honourable Lady's not been in the room at the Times. I think she's now being described as in the sort of outer inner circle around the Labour leadership. But I can say that the substance and the tone of those conversations between the government team and the opposition team have been constructive. I think that there is a genuine attempt to try to find a way through, but I'm not going to hide the fact, Mr. Speaker, that this is very difficult, because if it's going to work, it will mean both parties needing to make compromises and us ending up with a solution that, unlike any other so far proposed, will get a majority in the House. Yes. So far, this House has rejected our deal. It has rejected the opposition's proposals. It has rejected a referendum. It has rejected revocation. It has rejected a customs union. It has rejected Common Market 2.0. And it's not just a matter for, frankly, for government or even for the opposition front bench. It is a matter for every member of this House to take our responsibilities to the country seriously and find a way to agree on an outcome that enables us to deliver on the referendum result and to take this country forward.
Tom Perskler.